everybody, to another episode of the Men's Sexual Mastery Podcast, where we are here sending out these sound waves into the ethers to any ears that might be listening, to any brothers out there who are feeling this call into the awakening of their sexual energy in a way that is aligned with the sacred. As we say, we are here in service to the future generations of children waiting to be born into families where the mother and father have deeper and deeper and deeper lovemaking with every year that goes by. It just gets juicier. And that's all happening behind the scenes, but the kids can feel it. Kids can feel mom and dad's depth of love for each other and their continued journey of evolving together, and that they can be role models for future generations so that we can continue in a good way. So may this recording here today be in service to that timeline and to each of the brothers tuning in, to you stepping into the man you came here to be, the leader not only in the bedroom, but in the world as well.
Yes. Yes,
So be it.
So it is.
Well, I'm honored to be here today, again, by my brother Hawks. How you doing today, Hawks?
Hey, Ben. I'm doing well, thanks. Yeah, how are you?
Oh, man, I've been in it, but I'm here, What's the
Yep.
saying? Ready is a choice, not a feeling. So we're hitting the record button today, rain or
Let's
shine.
go.
Let's
Yep.
go. Yeah, and I'm really excited today to chat about the root of sexual desire that we're going to be diving into. Just before we hit the record button here, Hawks and I were going back and forth, as we do before each of these episodes, pondering what would be most beneficial for what we're experiencing in our realities right now, and what the brothers in our community are experiencing, and just what we're picking up. A lot of times these things can be coming through in real time, and a lot of our connections and experiences are our experiences can be very connected. So with that, I would love to actually just pass it off to you, Hawks, and hear a little bit of your experience and thoughts around the root of our sexual desire as men, and is it possible to ever fulfill that desire?
Well, the question of is it ever possible to fulfill that desire, I think has two answers, yes and no.
Yeah.
Like temporarily, yes. Over the long term, no, because I think desire is an ever-present force in our life that's there to move us. And I wouldn't want my desire to ever fully go away. And with that desire comes, like, the door is open for suffering, because if we're desiring something and we don't have it, then suffering is often the result. If we're, desiring to not experience something that we are, this idea of aversion, then suffering is right there waiting to grip us. And as you and I, both know through our practices with Vipassana, equanimity is the remedy to that. It's this ability to be at peace, to be equanimous with what is, whether there's craving or aversion there, or neutrality, just being accepting of it, smiling into it, as we say with our smiling king. So that's a little bit on desire. When it comes to sexual desire, I think what I want to speak to is this feeling that I hear from a lot of men, that, like, I'm desiring too much sexually. Like, my sexual desire is a problem and it's manifesting in these problematic ways in my life. And the reframe I have, if that feels resonant for anyone listening, is that maybe it's actually not this sexual desire that's the problem, it's unfulfilled desire and unfulfilled sexual experience. And I think that there's a pattern in our society of, for men especially, of like tending to our sexual desire behind closed doors, whether it's, using porn or some other way to stimulate ourselves and stimulate ourselves to arousal and eventually this like tension and release pattern of ejaculation. And that can create a temporary sensation of like release, but it's not really, in my experience, creating a level of fulfillment that creates satiation that then allows for like a true um, like experience of well-being. And so I'd love to talk about that idea of real sexual fulfillment. Like, what does that mean? How do we experience that? And what impact does that have on this ever present, sometimes seemingly ever present compulsive desire?
What is sexual fulfillment in your measure?
I could, what feels appropriate is to speak to my journey and experience with that a little bit. And it first, the first time I experienced sexual fulfillment in a new way was actually like with myself. And it was during a period when I embarked in a tantric training and I was learning a new approach to self love, self pleasure, or as we now call it in MSM, solo cultivation. And this was a repatterning of old ways of being sexual with ourselves or myself. And that pattern of building tension to an ejaculatory release. The new approach that was shared with me and that I enthusiastically, took into my practice and training was to build sexual arousal completely free of any external stimulus. So that's like one of the first most important aspects of that is being fully present with ourself, with myself, with the sensations in my body and not putting my consciousness outside of me on a screen or someone else or a fantasy even, which is another element of that. And that gets a little bit more like difficult to differentiate what's outside of me if the fantasy is being conjured up in my own mind. But as and as we encourage men, fantasy can be a tool to help us kind of like training wheels to help build arousal if we're reconditioning ourselves away from a more intense stimulus like porn. But ultimately, we're also eventually letting that training wheel of fantasy go and actually just being really present with the sensations in our body. And the other big part of this new way of being in a self pleasure practice was not having ejaculation as the conclusion of the experience. And I won't go too much more into the details of that practice. We've talked about it in previous podcasts. But there was a level of fulfillment that I experienced after engaging in that practice that left me feeling really energized. I felt no shame from the experience. I felt really like aligned with how I approached my sexual energy. And I felt surprisingly satisfied after
You
after
mean you didn't
allowing
you
pardon,
mean you
yeah.
didn't feel blue balls?
I did at times going through that as I was learning to walk. Yeah, there were times when I pushed it a little far or I didn't sufficiently integrate the energy afterwards. Um, but ultimately, what I learned was a new way of sexually fulfilling myself without anyone else there. And it
Mhm.
was really powerful. And as a result of that, the old pattern of turning to porn or the compulsion of feeling this like constant draw towards something like porn, that started to just fall away. And that
Mm.
was something really profound for me to experience because I had fought against that compulsion for porn for so long at that point, feeling like, oh, this isn't aligned, and yet this is still this ever present fixation. And once I really integrated that new approach to solo cultivation, that old desire just started to shed and dissipate, that old desire to something outside of myself, porn.
Mhm.
So that was really interesting. And that's like just working with myself. And then I could also speak
Mhm.
to, sexual fulfillment with a partner and the impact that that's had, and
Mhm.
how that, you know, is different from s- porn reenactment sex or other kinds
Mhm.
of like fast friction, tension, building tension to release sex. And
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'd love to move into that, but before we do, I just want to highlight what you shared with that idea of sexual self or self sexual fulfillment,
Hmm.
and coming from that overflowing cup, coming from abundance rather than scarcity, and how having that as a foundation of just being before even entering relationship, which is a key distinction here. And
Hmm.
that's really what's at the core of all this work. I mean, in our training, and then there's a lot of other tools out there, but this is really what we're doing, is building this foundation of the overflowing cup of sexual abundance, of emotional abundance, of just confidence and well-being, self-leadership, to reach those states, so then we can bring it into relationship. And this is a key distinction, I would say, from a lot of, the pickup artist space, you could say, or like dating scene, or like there's almost this manipulation and kind of this, I like to call it the inflated magician. It's kind of like this trickster who's just like knows how to swoon women or get them into bed, but at the end of the day he's not actually fulfilled. It's like he's actually coming from scarcity and needs to manipulate things and spin things in order to get what he wants, but ultimately that's not going to serve him. That's never going to satiate this desire he has deep down. But when we've met the desire and we're already complete in and of ourselves, and we can meet a partner in that space, there's like an imbued confidence, there's like an imbued fulfillment that creates a dynamic where you're not needing to manipulate, you're not needing to take or extract from your partner, you're not becoming codependent. And there's a level of sovereignty as well in it, which I think is beautiful for maintaining polarity in relationship as well. So, all of that's beautiful, man. I'm so happy you spoke to that. And the other thing I want to talk about, or just touch on for a second here, was and highlight, was this idea that your porn craving, your old tendencies for seeking release, uh, those shallow comforts or the shallow pleasures, you might get, the quick fixes, went away when you brought in this level of sexual integration it replaced the old system. Like instead of trying to fight the porn addiction or fight any of the old patterns, you actually just brought in a new system that was so fulfilling that it just outperformed the sexual quote unquote fulfillment that you thought you had previously. So
Hmm.
that's another important piece. And we talk all the time in our training about that concept from Buckminster Fuller, where he says, if you have a broken system, you don't focus on trying to fix the broken system. You don't focus on the problem, because what you resist persists. You're feeding it. Instead, build a new system that renders the old system obsolete, that outperforms it. And that's also what we're talking about here. So yeah, back to
Hmm.
you on bringing this into relationship and how that impacted your fulfillment in relationship. Man, would love to hear that.
Hmm. Yeah, there's an analogy that's coming up for me right now that's food related. And there's something that happens when we eat junk food, where the body's natural like satiation response, that indication that, oh, I'm full, I can stop eating now, that doesn't come on if we're eating like what's often referred to as empty calories junk food. It's lacking nutrient quality and density, and it tastes good, it's pleasurable in the moment to experience, but it's not bringing a level of satiation and actual like nutrient quality to our body that then triggers the signal in our body to be like, okay, you can stop eating now. We've received what we need.
Mhm.
And I look at sex in the same way, actually. You know, it's like this idea of gourmet sex or nutrient dense sex, where when that level of connection and intimacy, whether it's with ourselves, as I was just speaking to, or with a partner, when we actually get the nutrient quality that that desire signal in our body is looking for, it's, you know, I actually think that that sexual desire in our body is often coming up because actually what we're really seeking is deep connection, intimacy, feeling of belonging with a person or with ourselves. And if the nutrient quality and density isn't there, then it doesn't matter how much we give ourselves that junk food experience of quick sex, you know, like quick primal. It could seem super hot in the moment, but if it's lacking the depth of connection, it's not actually satiating something, that deeper need within us. And then same thing with like porn related masturbation. It's like it can seem delicious on the surface, but it actually leaves us feeling empty. And the need or desire to keep coming back for more and more and more doesn't go away because we're not actually meeting that deeper nutrient requirement within us. Yeah. So let's talk about in relationship. Um, I've also had the privilege of experiencing this in relationship. And, you know, Ben and we were also just chatting before hitting the record button about how important it is to name, like, you know, in all humility, very much a student of this work, always a student, not here to sit on some pedestal and pretend I've figured it all out, or, you know, have all the answers, or I'm living in some perfectly embodied, like free of faults experience. Absolutely not. I have my own challenges. They come up and they pass, and I get to move through them. And with all that being said, like I do also have lived experiences that have shown me new ways of being and have allowed me to like look up from the mountaintop and be like, oh, okay, I can see the land here, and orient myself to what's actually above the clouds. Whereas, you know, previously in my life, just being stuck in the clouds, I didn't even know that I was stuck in the clouds. I could just see as far as I could see. And so to share this as, you know, an opportunity to potentially see a new way. And with all that being said, sexual fulfillment in relationship for me has felt like that incredibly satiating meal where I'm not met with a signal to like want or need more right away. And that that level of fulfillment takes it takes intention, and um, it takes practice to really cultivate that. And, you know, it's a really big topic. I'm feeling into
Well,
like how much to actually
and
speak to on that one.
would you say it starts within, right?
It
It's an
starts
inside out
within.
game.
It is, you know, that's, yeah, sure. That's a good place to start. I mean, definitely it starts within, and it's our ability to show up in relationship fully present and like in a way that, you know, as you were speaking to before, when we fill our cup, we're no longer seeking outside of us to try and get something to fill that void. We can actually show up ready to give. And it's this energy of like, instead of showing up with the desire to take, or this like unconscious emptiness in us that we're seeking outside of us to fill, we can show up already full and ready in ourselves to then give to our partner. And it's that giving to our partner that creates this positive feedback loop of generative energy where she's then giving to us, and we're exchanging back and forth in a way that creates you know, a really nutrient dense soup of intimacy that can leave both partners feeling like, oh, like I'm good. Like that was amazing. Like, yeah, I could go again. I could, we could make love again the next day. There's like this feeling of like, yeah, that would be nice. I mean, why wouldn't we? But also, I'm good. There's actually a lot of other things that I would love to put this attention and energy towards, and I'm feeling still so satiated that I'm good. And that's an interesting thing too, this idea of quality over quantity. And I love quantity of sex. I encourage quantity of sex when the quality's there. And also it's like I don't think it needs to be something that like, oh, you got to be making love with your partner every day. I think there's periods and seasons where that might naturally happen, and that's beautiful. And also, if there's really nutrient dense gourmet sex that both partners can fully fill their cups from, that could be satiating for days or a week, to actually just still be living with that feeling of like fulfillment. And oftentimes it might not even be, that might just show up as being less distracted and more focused on the other
Mhm.
parts of our like mission and purpose, and feeling like, okay, that one pillar has really been met, and now I'm
Mhm.
freed up to look at what else in my life I can nurture and bring nutrient dense nourishment into.
Yeah. No, I love that last piece, or the direction you turned it outwards, because it's like when our cup is overflowing, and then when the relationship cup is overflowing, then
Yes.
it's like we got just so much abundance that now we're bringing it out into the world. This is like
Yes.
the third tier, where we're bringing that abundance, we're bringing that love making to life itself. We're bringing it into our creative projects, into our community, into our families.
Hmm.
It's this secret sauce mojo that's going on behind the background that nobody knows exactly what it is that is behind those sparkles in your eyes. You're walking around with the birds singing, and you're the well fucked man, and your partner's a well fucked woman. There's a vitality that just sends out you out into the world with. And ultimately the impact of that is like, I mean, this entire community and the men's sexual mastery training, for instance, is a byproduct of just that, actually. I
Yeah.
would say. But whatever your creation is, if you're an entrepreneur or an artist or a musician, or if you're raising a family, or if you're running a men's group, or you're involved in community service projects, like wherever it is you want to spend your time and your valuable life energy, your life force energy, everything is going to be boosted, and accelerated by you having just an epic, satiating love life, and your sexual energy being met down to the core, and continuing to maintain this too. Because, yeah, I love that you spoke to constantly being a student of this work. And it's interesting, and this is something I wanted to add in here in my experience, also being a student of this, is like, I appreciated what you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, where the fulfillment is temporary. It's always a temporary. It's only now, actually, that it can be found, and like it can't be found in the future or the past. And that craving for like future fulfillment, or that aversion of pain, or looking back on how things were and projecting into this present moment, the expectation of having gourmet sex, like you said, every single day, of everything being abundant all the time, that in itself is part of the desire, program that's running, that's keeping us from actually fully making love with what is.
Hmm.
So even with the fulfillment, there still is desire. The desire is not separate necessarily from, or you could say it is separate from the fulfillment. It's not. It's like there's a level of it that can be met, and then there's almost in my experience, like an awareness of and release of desire itself, which is actually coming back to the equanimity piece. And I know all of this is like this is very meta. This is like very deep stuff we're talking about here. But like for me, that's been the paradox that's kind of at the core of all of this, is like me continuing to claim my desire and be bold and masculine and assertive with my desire while simultaneously releasing all attachment to it and to outcome. And there's this deep process that can arise within that, that's like, I trust, at least in my experience, it's the refinement of my own presence. And this is where I think sexuality really becomes sacred, because for a lot of these spiritual, a lot of people who are connected to these spiritual lineages, whether it's, in Buddhism, like in a lot of the meditative traditions, they say that desire is the root of all suffering, right? And in this body of work, there's a clear distinction here that we're playing with fire, we're playing with desire, and we're attempting to hold our desire. And in brief moments, we are actually touching that which we desire and feeling that full sexual fulfillment while also remaining completely detached from it, completely free of it. And this is where, like, the monk who's sitting on the mountain can be meeting his, like, have a family and have a wife and have a partner and have epic sex at the same time. Because usually, traditionally, these, a lot of these monks living on mountains, like, it's all good until they come into contact with a woman, and then suddenly all their house of cards of spiritual practice falls down, because they're actually interacting with the polarity of the world. They're not, as men, we can often just, try to check out through spiritual practices. But when we actually come into partnership, and allow our partner to be our mirror for how we're showing up, how we're relating to desire, how we're relating to, our inner fulfillment or lack thereof, and can we continue to come back to our own center and fill our own cup and be entering relationship in these ways, like, it is actually refining how we're showing up, not just in that relationship, but in the world at large, and ultimately for ourselves. So I see this as like such a deep, it's so funny that so many men get into this work interested in having multiple non-ejaculatory orgasms, or, even breaking free from porn, or having an epic sex life. And yes to all of that, that's great, but this is really, when we're getting deeper into this work, it's the deepest personal transformation journey you could ever go on, ultimately.
Yeah. And one of the riskiest. There's there's an edginess to it that I think is what allows it to be so potentially powerful. And also, it's like you said, playing with fire. Like, shout out to Justin Patrick Pierce and London Winters, that book that you and I have both really enjoyed, and I love that reference to playing with fire, because it's like, yeah, this is spicy energy to be bringing into a spiritual practice, to be allowing it to be a path for our own evolution. And things can get spicy. It's not going to be easy. But yeah, for people who want to be immersed in this world, immersed in the beautiful polarity of this world, be a householder, as it's often, referred to in the Buddhist tradition, of like, yeah, you could go be a monk on the mountain and remove yourself from society and the ever present temptations that come with that immersion in society. You can go and isolate, and that's another path to a form of spiritual enlightenment. But for those of us who choose to live in this world, to have a family, to live in a home and be part of this culture and society, that sexual desire is not likely to go anywhere. So if our path is one of spiritual evolution, self-realization, how can we be with that energy and allow it to be fuel for our spiritual growth, is what I hear you speaking to a lot with meeting that desire with equanimity, and at the same time honoring it and allowing it to be a direction in our life, to help show us, to help reveal our path to us, but also to not get attached to the outcome of that. Yeah. I'd love to circle back to sexual fulfillment in relationship, because something came up as you were speaking there that feels like it could provide some element of closure, or like maybe deeper understanding for anyone who might have just been like, what's he talking about there? Yeah. So I think that a lot of what fuels our sexual desire to be in relationship, to be in, like penetrative sex with a partner, is this desire to feel the oneness, the union. Like when two become one, there's this remembering that can happen for us of like, oh yeah, we're all connected. And the fulfillment that I've experienced in sexual relationship, like that really true deep fulfillment, comes in after a sexual union where I really actually get to feel that, like, oh, I am my partner. I'm feeling her body. I'm feeling her experience, and I'm actually like letting go of my own ego in that process. I'm letting go of my own physical body and becoming one with my partner, becoming one with the universe, one with God. This like really powerful experience of like oneness that we get to experience in like a really, really quick temporary shot during orgasm. It's like orgasm is often called like le petit mort in French. It's like the little death. And it's this like expansiveness where for a brief moment, a few seconds, typically for men, a little longer for women, there's like a dissolution of the self, of the ego, and this like big bang experience of like, whoa. You get to forget about all of your woes and worries and aches and pains and anxieties, and all of that just disappears for a brief moment. And then after an ejaculatory orgasm, it tends to, it comes back in at some point. But with non-ejaculatory lovemaking, or with like really prolonged deep lovemaking where there's longer periods of time to be in that experience of union, and also the setup, like setting the table in the relationship and in that sexual experience, so that that's actually really available, that level of connection is available. It requires deep trust. It requires connection beyond just the physical, really deep emotional and energetic connection. And there's lots of practices that, something like Tantra or Neo Tantra, can provide a lot of these tools, things like eye gazing and different practices, to allow us to really start to dissolve the boundary between our partner, so that when we actually come together in penetrative sex, there's, like I said, the table's been set for that experience to occur. But that, I think, is what is at the root, at least in my experience, and for my partner too. I feel I could speak for her a little bit on this, is that when we really tap into that experience of prolonged union and dissolution of the self, the two becoming one, and like the whole of that one actually being greater than the sum of the parts, is something that is like it's fulfilling on a soul, spiritual, physical, emotional, mental level. That is, I don't know that it's really attainable anywhere else. I think we can tap into those states in really, deep spiritual practices or like substance induced states of ecstasy or oneness.
Mhm.
Like there are other ways to tap into that, but in terms of a partner practice or something that we can like somewhat easily and readily bring into our daily life,
Mhm.
that's it's possible. And what great medicine to be able to like remember, oh yeah,
Mhm.
there's so much more than just this physical mental experience. And that, I think, is like what's at the root of that deeper level of satiation. And it's something that until experienced, might seem kind of woo woo or far fetched or theoretical, but it is really possible. And so that's just like something I wanted to add in that hopefully creates a little more clarity there. Maybe not though.
Yeah. Oh man, I had a beautiful image as you were sharing that of, being like with my partner in those moments as well, where it's like suddenly I am the monk on the top of the mountain, like in the Himalayas. It's like that. Not that I have been in the Himalayas, and I guess I have meditated and stuff, but like and I've done plenty of spiritual practices, and I know you have too, 10-day vipassanas, silent meditation retreats, darkness retreats, plant medicines, like all the different technologies you could say to get out of the mind and into the quantum. And like that, yeah, I just had an image of like being up on the mountaintop. And what's beautiful is that we're not there alone, we're like there with our beloved in unity, and I, yeah, love the way you brought that back in, because it really ties full circle back into the entire opening of this podcast here today and the intention for men's sexual mastery, which is to guide men into being those leaders, within themselves, and bringing that leadership within their relationships so that they can be satiated, they can be fulfilled, their partner can be fulfilled. And by extension, they're able to tap into that, going to the top of the mountain on a regular basis without even needing to leave their home. To be able to go into the bedroom with their partner and tap into sexuality as a deep spiritual practice that's deeply satiating for every aspect of their being. Like all of this work merges meditation and breath work and all these practices into sexuality. And when you bring sex in, again, it's like fire, it's an accelerant, but it can be rocket fuel when it's properly applied. So yeah, that's a perfect place, I think, to land the plane here, and also extend the invitation to any brothers tuning in. If this is resonating with you and you're interested in learning these tools and techniques and having the support of a brotherhood, for implementation, because we say this is internal martial arts. You're retraining new neural pathways, you're shifting your entire programming that's come from porn into something much more generative. And if that's something that resonates with you, we've got an upcoming training program at the end of the month. Still have some spots open, so check us out, mensexualmastery.com. And with that, turn it over to you, Hawks. Do you have any last words before we sign off?
May we all receive the nutrients that are required for our health, our vitality, our satiation, and to fill our cups so we can go spread that with the world. Like you said, that's like, yeah, that's what it's all about. And it's what feels, in my experience, like the best thing ever is having an overflowing cup and being able to go out into the world and truly give.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, with that, I'm out. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Big love.
Yeah, likewise. Big love, brothers. See you on the next one.